Hey friends, welcome to day 5 of the 12 days of tools with Tammy. Thank you for consistently watching these tutorials. I'm having a lot of fun demonstrating them. So today on day 5, we're going to talk about a socket. So a socket is technically a wrench, but I feel deserves its own highlight because it's quite different than your typical wrench. And the main difference between a socket or ratchet wrench and a regular wrench is we turn the device to tighten the nut. So that's what it does. It turns a nut or bolt. And the beauty of it is we don't have to reposition it to turn it again. So with your normal adjustable wrench, you'd put it on your nut and then you'd turn it and then you'd have to back it off, reposition your hand, put it back on the bolt, tighten it again, and you just keep doing that whole process. Where with the ratchet, the socket, you don't. So once you put it on and it's covering the nut, you tighten it so you don't hear anything. And then when you want to reposition it, you don't remove it. You just click it down and you hear a clicking sound. That's why they call it a ratchet, because it's ratcheting down and getting ready to provide force again, so that when you turn whatever object you need to, you don't have to take it off, reposition it, and move your hand. So it saves time. It really comes in handy when you're doing multiple nuts and bolts, or just if you're in a tight area and you don't have the room to move your hand, which is really common. Is it something you'd have around your home? Absolutely. I feel that there's enough applications that a small set would be warranted. Quite honestly, this set here I have had for I don't know how long. It's followed me around. I've had to put new sizes in because I've lost them here or there, but I have had this set for probably 20 years. So they do last. They're very handy to have, and there's something really unique about sockets. So just like the wrenches, there are two sizes. You have your SAE or your imperial, and then you also have your metric. Um, there's a third size that is associated with sockets, and that's the drive size or the head size. So I have this really big here set here that my kids got me for a present, 183 pieces. You'll notice there's a theme that my kids get me, some of these tools as we go along, or my wife would give it to me, or someone. My tools are an accumulation over many years of using them, of needing them, of when I need something, it's like, yeah, you know what, it has enough of a need that it warrants me purchasing it. So that's why I have quite the collection of tools. But this here set kind of gives a really good demonstration on the drive size. So if we look at this really big, massive socket, you'll see it's a 1 1/8 inch. You can't see it, but it says 1 1/8 inch. So that's the size of nut that it'll cover. But then in the middle, it's got a 1/2 inch. And what that 1/2 inch is the drive. And if you look at these 3 socket sets, I shouldn't have worn black today, I apologize. You've got a little wee one that is about less than the size of my palm of my hand, and then you've got another one that is about 2 inches longer than that, and then you've got another one in this set that's even longer than that one, right? And what they have on the head are different size turning points, and that is the drive of the socket. And what that allows, if you within this set, we have really little sockets that would cover, maybe if you're doing something intricate like a jewelry box or furniture, and it just has a wee nut that you really want to be able to ratchet in because it saves time, and you don't want to break it or mar it, or these big tools are just way too much, then that's when you would use something like this little wee 1/4 inch socket. And then, for the big tools like your lug nuts and that, you'd have a bigger bar, and there's even a bigger one that I'll show at the end of the presentation. But that's a consideration when you're purchasing sockets, is what size drive your socket set is. For the most part, between 3/8 to a half is probably the most common. A 1/4 inch, these little guys are kind of a specialty, so I wouldn't worry about that. But when you buy a socket set, it's either going to be a 1/2 inch or 1/8 of an inch. So here's two that my set that I've had forever and a day is just the 3/8 inch, and it's a standard application, doesn't need a lot of force. What I use now most is actually my 1/2 inch set, and in my 1/2 inch set, this is the one, the sockets that I use predominantly, and it has a side. See, it's got a red and a blue, and that's how they're distinguished between your SAE and your metric. And so the SAE will have like a half, 5/8, 3/4, where your metric will have 10, 11, 12 in millimeters. The drive only comes in 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. It only comes in the SAE size. So once you have it, you really don't have to worry about what size of drive you have. It's if you need to buy a specialty size, you should really be conscious of what size you have. Now, to use a ratchet, there's this is called a carriage bolt, and it's something that would go into, I make a lot of picnic tables, and this is what holds, this is, you can use it at playstations, you can use them for stairs, for decks. There's a lot of outdoor applications why you would use this. So to put the bolt on, to put the nut onto the bolt, we could use an adjustable wrench, but when you're working under and you can't really see, to be able to turn this while you're reaching under can be a little bit tough. So what we'd want to use is the socket. Now, do I know what size nut this is? No, I really don't. I might know it when I buy it, but it's not something that I want to remember. The easiest way to figure out what size it is, when on the cases, the working end is always open, and literally you just go and put it in. Oh, what size is it? Right there. That's the size of socket that I'm going to need. So I just slide that right off my mechanism. I know that this is the 1/2 inch, so I'm going to slip it right on here. And when I go to tighten it, this is going to be in the picnic table, and then I just turn it, and that's the tightening when you don't hear the click. Ratchet it down so that I can reposition it, turn it, and then when you don't hear the click. So that's when it doesn't have to be driven into anything. The other thing is when this is a screw, I've already got it set up. So this is a little screw that has a driver and a screwdriver bit on it, but the screwdriver would probably strip it because it's a fairly substantial size thread. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a ratchet, and I know that it's a 10 millimeter head. I've already sized it out, and so I'm actually going to use my 3/8 inch socket, and this is the set that I keep in my truck. I take this to all my clients because it's got the most standard sizes. So we just pop it on, and there's always a little ball that allows the socket to fit on snugly, right? So you just pop it right on. Let's see if I can get it popped on. Of course, trying to do this. Well, it's technical difficulties. It's not going to pop on for me. Of course, it's cold. My hands are cold. It's not working. Doesn't really matter. So we righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Which way is which? There's always an adjustable head on this back end of the socket, and one side is to make it loose and one side is to make it tight. There's no magic trick to know which way is which. It's literally just move it. If it's not providing the force in the direction that you want it to, switch it the other way, and then it'll provide the force in that way. There's not a lot that you have to remember. You just have to try it. So as you can see, I'm tightening this, or I don't know if you can see. I'll bring it back. You can hear the click, and there's a force that I have to exert to drive it into the wood. Draw it back very, very easily. You can hear a click, drive it in, and I'm applying a force. So it's easier, it's quicker, and I can get it done. With some sockets, so this one, oh, you know why it wouldn't go on? My mistake. This one has on and off lever. So to put it on, you push the little button, and to take it off, so then it's on there, it doesn't fall off like it just did. And to take it off, you push the button, and it just pops right off. Some have different mechanisms for popping them on and off. I'd forgotten about this one, so there you go. You just can watch me discover it live. Didn't really make a difference, but now it won't come off until I activate the little button on the back. And that's the socket set in a nutshell. Um, should you, as a homeowner, have a set? I'd recommend, yeah. Definitely a small set. They're inexpensive, easy to store, and there's not a lot of considerations that you have to take into account. There's basically, I think, three types of sockets. There's your regular sockets. There's your deep set sockets, which would be for kind of spark plugs, or is the only reason that I would need a deep socket one, or my, what do you call it, my anoid in my hot water tank. I actually have a specialty socket for that one as well. And then there's something called impact sockets, and that's made for pneumatic. So if you're using power tools or air compressor tools, and there's going to be a lot of force exerted onto the socket itself, that's what the what do you call it? I forget what I just said. That's what this set is here, actually. High impact. Pardon me on that. So the high impact is not something that the average homeowner is going to have to consider. Now, one thing that I've had for quite a while is this really, really long socket set, or it's called a breaker bar. So it's a 1/2 inch head, and it's really long. And my son actually got me this because we were taking something apart. We were taking some wooden flower beds apart many years ago, and we were fighting with this normal size socket to remove the bolts that held that old flower pot together. So he went out and bought this breaker bar for me for the next time, and I've used it a handful of times, and when you have to use it, it's so handy to have. It really is, because this extra length between the moving part and where your hand is, it allows you to turn something with less force than you would need if you were using just a shorter handle. So this is called a breaker bar, and it's basically used for when you have something really, really tight in your nut or your bolt, or for a nut and bolt combination. And that's it for sockets. So thank you for joining me today. I hope this you found this a little bit helpful, and it is something that I think maybe the average homeowner should have a little bit, again, of a, not an everyday use, but when you need it, you're really going to need it. So we're going to wrap it up at that. Thank you, and I hope to see you tomorrow for day 6 of the 12 days of tools. Bye for now.